Last week I took a road trip up to Herefordshire, home to many of the UK's best cider makers, to help out with the 2020 apple harvest. I say help, but mostly all I did was follow the founders of the amazing Little Pomona cider around, soaking up every ounce of knowledge I could about apples and cider making. I also had an enlightening afternoon at Tom Oliver's place, learning all about perry and barrels. But one thing I didn't show was just quite how much cider I drank. Well, this week that changes. After 3 hard days' labour, I sat down with Little Pomona's Susanna and James to try 2 delicious ciders and 1 perry, each intended to widen my horizons a little more and hopefully teach you all a thing or two about this incredible young cider making scene.
So I feel like I've learned an incredible amount in an incredibly short space of time, and I'm pretty keen to kill all of that knowledge with lots of booze. So we've got three examples that you were really keen to show me, one of which is from you guys. Should we start there?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. So first bottle is a single varietal cider made from Eggman russet, which is a beautiful dessert apple, actually, which is grown pretty local to here, and it's characterised by the name gives it away, but it's got this complete russeting, which is this kind of brown leathery thing on the skin. So, right. And it's super sweet. So you can get potential alcohols of up to 10%. I mean, in this case, we had potential alcohol of 8.3%. So that was good for us. And it's got great acid as well, and it's just got wonderful fruit flavours.
Let's get it in a glass. Let's give it a go. Is there sort of an official difference between dessert and cider apples, or is it just what they've been used for historically and they've become known as?
Well, I think you can make cider from any apple basically, but cider apples are characterised by elevated levels of things like tannins or acids or sugars, or a combination of all of those.
Right.
So you've got.
So the things that you want to play with are really there in cider apple.
So and typically in the West Country. Tannic cider apples, high sugars, high tannins is what you typically see. But of course you were tasting with us the other day, and we had Foxwell, which is low tannin but super high acid. Mm-hmm. So you've got this big array of apples that come under the cider apple classification.
The thing with the Eggman russet, as James said about the russeting, is that that's giving character. So that little extra element on the skin is part of the what you're going to. So it's a little bit more interesting in that respect.
So this is, you can see it's still, or you maybe can't, but it is still. And what we did with this was we ran some juice off the press straight into a cognac barrel, and we let it ferment spontaneously, and then at one point we were happy with it and we put it into bottles. So that's as simple cider making as you can get. So really nice barrel, really nice fruit, and just let nature take over and do the rest. And it's pretty complex, I think. Actually, aromatically, it's kind of yellow and green fruits. There's the lime leaf coming through. I get a lot of that. You get a sense of the barrel, but it's not overwhelming.
Kind of green citrus acidity, but also there's definite cognac kind of fruitiness to it. There's a sharpness there as well, particularly on the aroma.
I think so, and I think the acids come through. That they just lift things. Yeah. So I think that's really
there's
fun.
a spiciness, and then at the finish, the nuttiness that characterises the apple really comes out. So it's kind of wine-like. Mm-hmm. It has a mouthfeel similar to white wine.
And it can take anything from 4, 5, 6 months. This is actually from 2019.
Yeah, so we pressed these apples on the 8th of December 2019. Yeah. So it's nearly.
It's a pretty young.
For us, it's quite young.
Yeah, it is. It can take anything.
And that's, I think, because this is a dessert apple, so it has no tannins.
Yeah.
So any tannins you're getting has come from the wood in the barrel.
Right.
They naturally sort of come forward more quickly, because a lot of the maturation process when you're using tannic apples is to try and soften tannins and get rid of bitterness. So with this, we don't have to do that. So.
We're going to move on to a perry from our near neighbour, Tom Oliver.
Pet nat is, it means pétillant naturel is the French expression that gets abbreviated to pet nat. And it means essentially putting something in bottle before it's finished fermenting. to finish its fermentation in the bottle, and so it gets a natural carbonation.
So it's almost like the bottle conditioning in beer, but I guess pet nat is generally a lower carbonation than
generally
a brewer
lower,
would be
and
looking for.
I guess sometimes in bottle conditioning in beer you prime the liquid, and then
You might do. Yep.
And pet nat is unprimed basically,
Right,
so
okay.
you're actually adding a fermenting liquid. You're bottling a fermenting liquid and allowing it to continue.
So this will be a lovely blend of some of the pears, and I think, and as you'll have seen, he's got really beautiful ones he picks from his own little orchard, but also lovely other ones that get brought from around the region. So he is one of the maestros of Perry there. So he's,
Is it a very different discipline using perries? I remember you said that there's some complex sugars that can't be broken down, so there's usually more body and sweetness to them. Does that mean you have to treat it very differently when it comes to the blending and the aging?
Also, they're kind of fickle things, so everyone will know from buying pears from the grocer or the supermarket, or whatever, they'll be green and hard for a long time, and then you'll come back and they're mush. So there's this tiny window of opportunity to press them when they're exactly right, and you have to do that. And also they do weird things, like they'll produce acetic acid anaerobically and stuff like that, which doesn't happen with apples. It's just like, so they're kind of very fickle, they're tricky to work with. They can precipitate a lot of tannins even after years in bottle. So there's all sorts of little things to trip you up. So, but Tom is one of the masters of Perry, and he wins. I mean, I think in 2019 he won virtually every competition
he does.
in the UK
Just
with Perry.
Yeah.
I mean, it was incredible.
I mean, the smell on this is remarkable. It smells like, if you put that under my nose and I was blindfolded, I'd have said you'd held up a camembert. Like it's got that really soft cheese
It does actually.
maturity to it. And then maybe there's some chutney on there because there's also some definite soft fruit notes as well.
It's fresh and it's bright, and it's got a kind of succulent juiciness that makes you want to
It's
go
got
again.
that tannin that in certain wines makes you want to drink it quicker, and in beer you use bitterness to do it. It's so Moorish.
It's super Moorish, And there's, as you say, there's fine tannins, but they're not, and there's that, it's basically dry, but there's a little hint of sweetness, that unfermented sugar, which just really helps.
Yeah, I mean it's not complex like this one. This one, it punches you in the face, but there are some complexities coming through, but it's just so immediate compared to the other one where you sit and you think about it. This one, you're like, whoa!
It's super crushable actually. I just glide
But
away
also,
on that, so.
imagine that anything to do with goat's cheese. Imagine that with a goat's cheese tart or something like that.
Absolutely.
Or even, actually, you'd have this with a dessert. You could have this, like if you're in a cafe with a pastry with apricots or something like that. The sparkle is just so perfectly poised. I always think that the sparkle is like the fourth dimension. So we've got our acids, our sugars, and maybe tannins, and then you've got that sparkle. And it's so beautifully judged, that one.
Yeah, it's really well done.
So, we, in our tasting room here, this is one of the ones that we will, put on tasting so people can have it as part of a flight. So you can taste, and loads of people haven't tried Perry. Yeah. So there's the trees, many of them are so rare, and they grow beautifully around here. There's also a huge swathe in Middle Europe as well, and then pockets of keen people in the States, and I think also in Australia. But they take decades to establish the trees.
Right. What I would say to everyone is drink more Perry, because as Susanna was saying, there aren't that many trees around, and there's no incentive for in modern farming to plant pear trees because they take so long to bear a decent crop. So,
so it's always up to the drinker to make it work.
Unless there's a demand for Perry, and it's an amazing drink.
So you save this one to last, just like beer or wine or anything, you should plot your journey through cider carefully so that you're not blowing your palate early on, and I understand this one's going to be quite the experience.
Yes.
Well, this is Reson Detro from a very famous cider producer called Ross-on-Wye Cider and Perry, and based, funny enough, not in Ross-on-Wye, but very near Ross-on-Wye, in a place called Peterstowe. Albert and Mike Johnson, so it's a family company, and they grow most of the fruit on their own farm.
Which is quite unusual for a cider maker to produce and grow everything.
Yeah, historically it would have been more common, but nowadays it's less common. And they do buy in fruit, but they've got a big acreage and a load of variety of apples and pears on their farm, which is great. This one is their kind of flagship cider. It's called Reson Detro, which I think means reason to be.
Yeah, reason for living.
And a reason for living, yeah, exactly. And I guess it harks back to their time as commercial growers, where they were selling most of their fruit to Bulmers. And the two varieties that will be planted in virtually every Bulmer's orchard are Michelin and Dabinet. There will be other things as well, but those two varieties are pretty constant. So this is a blend of those two varieties. There's a big component of this has been in barrel prior to the final blend.
Do we know what kind of barrel? Is it the same, or do they mix that
Well,
up?
I think you might know when you taste it.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, right.
So again, you've got an amazing colour, haven't you? Look at that, beautiful.
Yeah, it's a beautiful colour.
Yeah.
And it's a big, bold cider. So wild fermented. Everything at Ross is wild fermented.
Yeah.
And this is simple putting it into bottle, priming it, and then putting it into bottle to get a little bit of carbonation. They always go for low carbonation levels. They just want that soft, creamy sort of mouthfeel that you get from that.
And this one has definite legs, and you were saying, you know, this should be seen as it's a wine making process, like we talked about earlier, and in terms of ABVs as well, it's not like a strong beer.
Yeah.
No.
It's a session wine.
Yeah, it's a sessionable wine, basically. That's how we look at it.
That's how so we don't serve pints, and we never will, because you just don't need to either.
There's loads of oak character to that that wasn't on the other three.
Yeah.
Loads of Scotch whiskey.
Yep.
Yeah.
So you can see that a mile off.
Yeah. So it's Isla whiskey, I think. You get the real smokiness from the barrel coming through.
Yeah, there is a smoked bacon kind of afternote on the retro nasal, like
absolutely,
coming back.
And that's I think Ross-on-Wye have kind of pioneered the use of Isla or peated whiskey barrels in their cider, and it's great.
I think
that with smoked pork, with ribs, that kind of stuff must just be so hedonistic and
I mean, Albert, I think his classic match with this is like a ribeye steak.
Yeah.
Well cooked ribeye, a really good piece of meat.
well matured, dry aged.
So salt, fat, protein,
and then acid,
and actually,
key components on your tongue.
If you want to learn more about the British natural cider scene, head to discovercider.com, or to find out more about the region we've been travelling, head to the Three Counties Cider and Perry Association website.
Thanks so much for having me for the last couple of days. I've learned a huge amount. I've panked myself silly, which never gets old, and genuinely had my mind blown on frequent occasions by the flavours that are possible here and by the philosophy that you guys have, which is so different to beer. And I think it's going to be the start of lots of cider content on the craft beer channel.
That's so good.
We're so excited. Thank you for coming to see us. We do have to do the cider cheers, which is wassail. So can we do a bit of a wassail? 1, 2, 3.
Cheers,
Wassail.
wassail.